You are Locked On Braves POSTCAST, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, your team every day.
And hello and welcome into the Braves POSTCAST, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta. Grant McAuley, Jake Mastroianni with you after what was easily, I think, one of the most frustrating games of the year for the Braves. It didn't last incredibly long, and they had to deal with a pitcher who was more locked in than I think at any time I've ever seen him face the Braves. That, of course, was the Blue Jays' Chris Bassitt, who tossed a complete game in a 3-0 win over Atlanta in Game 1 of a 3-game series up in Toronto as the Jays draw first blood on the Braves. We'll talk all about the performance of Bassitt and, more importantly, perhaps for the Braves side of things, a really great performance from Spencer Strider, but not really the night that the offense was able to pick him up. We'll get into all of that here on this edition of the POSTCAST. As always, though, I want to remind you to subscribe to Locked On Sports Atlanta right here on YouTube. Enable the alerts so you get notified every time we drop a new episode. Go ahead and hit that like button. Even if you didn't like the final score, it's okay to do that. And make sure you tell a friend about the show and subscribe to Locked On Braves wherever you get your podcast. Jake, I think I've used the word frustrating a time or three this year. There haven't really been too many of them. In fact, I was racking my brain to think of one that was more frustrating throughout the game. I know that there's been a couple that, you run into that one trouble inning and you lose it, or it happens in the ninth inning where you get, walked off by a team, or you blow a game that you were winning. That's happened a couple of times to the Braves this year, but this game just felt like it was building this steady crescendo of, okay, could have done without that. Oh, could have done without that. Oh, that's going to hurt later. Those kind of things just seem to be plentiful in this game.
Yeah, and especially offensively, you expect this lineup, you get 9 innings, you expect them to break through and have a punch at some point. It's just like, is it going to be this inning? Is it going to be this inning? And like you said, a missed opportunity here. Next thing you know, complete game shutout. Braves offense isn't going to have too many of those, but a lot of credit to Chris Bassitt, what he did on this night.
Yeah, I got to give you the old Braves idiom of tip your cap, because Chris Bassitt, love him or hate him, and the past performance and who he used to pitch for and all of those other things, he had it going on this particular night. He was able to limit the Braves offense when he needed to, and he was able to go the distance. And that's something that is kind of rare in today's game. So good on him. The Blue Jays needed it. They got just enough runs off Spencer Strider in the Atlanta bullpen to grab a win. Let's get inside the box score here. Braves now 25-13, shut out on 2 hits by Chris Bassitt. No errors, 4 men left aboard. We'll talk about some of those missed opportunities here in a moment. Blue Jays now 22-16, 3 runs, 6 hits, no errors. They left 6 men on. Chris Bassitt, the complete game shutout of Atlanta. Spencer Strider, he pitched into the 7th inning, a season-high 110 pitches. I believe that might have been a career high as well. Now 4-1 on the years. He's charged with a very tough luck loss. 2 hours, 12 minutes, 35,047 on hand to see it at Rogers Center. We talked a little bit about Bassitt. I don't know that there's really that much more to say other than when he did get into trouble, he was able to find his way out of it. For Spencer Strider, the little bit of trouble that he did get in, the Blue Jays were able to do just enough against him.
Yeah, but I mean, overall Strider did what he had to do in this game, and it's unfortunate. 100%. Yeah, you hate to waste a start like this from Spencer Strider, but in a game where your offense gives you nothing, every little bit is going to look like come back and hurt, and it did in this circumstance. Fortunately, it was only that 1 run in that 5th inning that they gave up. They did get the other out at home, a call that was overturned, but unfortunately another inherited runner came in on a pass ball or wild pitch by Danny Young. So tough one for Spencer Strider for sure, but on the whole, another amazing start for him as he I know it's early, but he's right there in that NL Cy Young discussion. He takes back over the strikeout lead for all of Major League Baseball, so that's great as well. I mean, he's fantastic. It's just, like you said, it's frustrating because the rotation's banged up right now, and you have Strider go out and put up one of these performances, and you give him nothing offensively. You can't do that right now with what the Braves are missing in the rotation. So for me, that's what makes this so frustrating. But Strider was fantastic. 33 swings and misses in this game. I mean, that is just an absurd amount. 12 strikeouts obviously is great, but I mean, he was just his dominant self, averaging 97 with the fastball. That slider was playing up. Velo was up on it tonight. So yeah, he really had it all going, but it's just a night where you couldn't make any mistakes. And, unfortunately the Blue Jays were able to get him for a couple.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's one of those nights where, you would look at the move to take him out of the game after 6 2/3 innings. He was charged with 5 hits, or gave up 5 hits, charged with 2 runs, so just 1 at the time that he left the game. 1 walk, 12 strikeouts. I mentioned 110 pitches, 80 of those were strikes as well, and Jake mentioned 33 swings and misses. That, as they say, will play. you just kind of look at what was going on for the Braves in a couple of different innings. So I almost don't want to spend any time, nitpicking over the bullpen, bringing in Danny Young. He was all over the place, and the Jays were able to tack on a run there. But it was the bottom of the fifth inning that I really feel like is where the game just briefly got away from Spencer Strider to no fault of his own in the way I'm looking at it, because I hate to get into the home plate umpire, and it's not a conspiracy. It was just a bad night for him all around. I mean, this strike zone was more of an educated guess, or as I mentioned, a suggestion than really kind of by the book. But there was a miscalled third strike on Kevin Kiermaier that I felt like changed the whole complexion of the bottom of the fifth. That brought up George Springer. Spencer got ahead of him 0-2. Then he left a fastball over the middle. Springer is a professional hitter, a very good one. He was able to, put a run across the board. Kiermaier was gunned down at the plate. So, you only give up the one, but on a night that you don't score at all, it's kind of tough to see one run scored that way, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And you really hate it. Look, it's the human element part of the game. We know that, but again, in such a tight game like this, that call just has huge ramifications, because you talk about the bullpen, and if that game's still tied or the Braves are winning, maybe those bullpen choices are different. So, it plays a huge role into that. I'll also say, if you didn't have Dylan Lee have to start a game the other night and throw so many innings, he most likely gets that spot, but you don't want to bring him in after throwing all those pitches. AJ Minter, his rough outing, I'm sure you want to give him another day off if you can. So, all that kind of played into this, the Braves being behind, having to use some of your lefties, recently, and, the workload that they had on them. So it all kind of factors in this game. But yeah, big call there, and ended up being such a huge call. I know it ended up being a 3-0 game, but again, that inning plays out a little bit differently. Maybe the bullpen strategy plays out a little differently, and maybe the game plays out a little differently.
Yeah, and think about this. Maybe just the seventh inning itself plays out a little bit differently, because Spencer doesn't have to throw, half a dozen more pitches, doesn't give up the run there in that inning. I don't know what the butterfly effect of all of this is. Eventually, the Braves are going to have to score a run. I want to point that out. That's kind of the most important thing that you need to do if you want to win a game. You got to score some runs, and you got to end up outscoring the other guys. So the Blue Jays did their thing. Chris Bassitt certainly did his. Toronto was able to take advantage of the limited opportunities they got. A solo home run late for Dalton Varsho off of Kirby Yates, but that was just kind of tacking on as it became a 3-0 game at that point. Braves, meanwhile, their offense did miss a couple of opportunities. I do want to talk about those. Before we do, though, I want to tell you about one of our great sponsors on the show, and that, of course, is Game Time, because buying tickets to your favorite events should not be stressful. Game Time's a fast and easy way to buy tickets to all of the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped over all the fun you're going to have at your chosen event. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So as we look at the Braves offense in this one, clearly you see the 0 up there on the board. To me, I felt like the fifth inning was probably the big one, Jake. That one played out so oddly. Eddie Rosario, thanks for getting a double, because you wanted to break up the Chris Bassitt no-hitter at some point, so that was mildly important. He gets down to second, ends up getting gunned down trying to steal third. I'm not really sure what went on there. Trying to make something happen, I think, is probably what we could file that one under. But then as the inning goes on, Chris Bassitt started to kind of lose touch with the strike zone, even with any help he was getting from Laz Diaz. Couple of hit batsmen and a walk, and the Braves weren't able to get anything out of that. A 2-0 pitch pop out by Orlando Arcia, foul down the right field line. That was, I think you filed that under the frustration of Bassitt could not find the strike zone. He's behind 2-0, not particularly close. Two hit batsmen, a walk right before you come up. It just felt like maybe Orlando Arcia was also in the Eddie Rosario boat of just trying to get something going, maybe to a fault.
Yeah, and look, Ronald Acuna Jr. is on deck. Yep. He's probably going to groove you one, and so maybe you take a shot there on a 2-0 pitch, but at the same time, Ronald Acuna Jr. is on deck, and this guy hasn't thrown a lot of strikes lately. Maybe wait until you take one, because you certainly would love to get Ronald up in that situation. If he walks you, hits you, that's a run. It's a free run. So, I don't love that decision there by Orlando Arcia. Don't love the decision to steal third base. It's just really, it was the fifth and sixth inning in this game where I thought the only time that the Braves had an opportunity to score. They made some bad decisions and just some bad baseball. In the sixth inning, he had first and second, nobody out, and Riley yet grounds into another double play that pretty much kills that inning as well. I mean, and that was really the only opportunities the Braves had. But yeah, in particular, that fifth inning, you finally saw Chris Bassitt start to slip up a little bit, and just with some bad base running, maybe a bad decision. I'm never going to fault the guy for getting a 2-0 count and thinking that he's going to get a good pitch and try to drive it.
Sure.
But yeah, with the way he was throwing at that point, it felt like that was their opportunity to really take advantage, and they really just blew it and threw it away.
Yeah, if Orlando Arcia had, gotten a base hit there, clearly we'd be having a totally different discussion about, hey, why are you swinging 2-0? Maybe be a little bit more patient. Maybe give Ronald Acuna Jr. a chance. You're the 9th place hitter in the order. I guess some of these things are implicit, but when you're a ball player with a bat in your hand, a chance to make a play, and your team needing you to, take a shot at it, I can certainly understand that, it could go one of two ways. And unfortunately for Orlando Arcia and the Braves, it went the way of an inning-ending pop-out. You brought up the 6th inning and that ground ball double play for Austin Riley. I went back and looked at this. 9th double play already this year. This was game number 38 for the Braves. He hit into 13 double plays all of last year, 11 double plays all of 2021. We've talked about the launch angle being off for Austin. He's hitting the ball on the ground a lot more, but unlike Ronald Acuna Jr., that exit velocity simply ain't there, and that ground ball double play, I don't say it often, but I'll say it every once in a while. Sometimes a strikeout isn't the worst thing that can happen with runners on base, and that double play would be filed under that category.
Yeah, it's really frustrating for Austin Riley right now. And, I don't know what the answer is. Maybe you move him down in the order a little bit. I think that's all you can really do. But he's been struggling with off-speed pitches, changeups in particular, and sinkers down and in, which is what Bassitt was really featuring tonight. So you knew that was somewhat of a bad matchup. And again, 9 double plays already. It's just when a runner gets on first with less than 2 outs and Riley comes up, it's your fear right now. And I'm sure at some point it's playing into his head a little bit as well. So
I mean, be on his mind.
Yeah, you rounded into that many double plays, you're struggling. I'm sure that doesn't help either, but you just hate to see that. It was a prime opportunity. Your first and second hitters get on for the middle of the order, and then next thing you know, the inning is pretty much washed because of a double play.
Yeah, and I'm not a big proponent of change just for the sake of change, particularly when I want to point a couple of stats out. Then I want to get back to the batting order thing. The Braves just lost on the road for the 4th time this year. They're 15-4. They're a very good team away from home. They haven't lost a series away from home. They're on pace, Jake, to win 107 games this year based on their 25-13 start. And I know there's a lot of baseball left to be played. So let me just put all of that out there on the table. And then let me tell you, I'm not a proponent of change just for the sake of change for a team that by and large has been winning, and you have had a lot of production, I think, from the top men in your order at times, just maybe not as much as you wanted. I think when you look at Matt Olson, after his 0 for tonight, his OPS dropped below 900, but he's still finding ways to produce and come up with big hits at time. OPS now for Austin Riley this year is 720. I know a lot of people kind of track this back to last year. I think it's nothing more than coincidence that he, hasn't hit as much since he signed that long-term contract. I don't think there's a direct correlation there. It's just uncanny and unfortunate timing, I would say. But you brought it up, and I'm interested to kind of discuss it at least for a minute or so. Hitting third in the lineup, that's a pivotal spot. The Braves have some other candidates in other places that maybe could hit in the 2nd spot of the order if you wanted to maybe drop Austin Riley down. Or have Matt Olson drop down, maybe push Riley down past the cleanup spot, down past Sean Murphy, and maybe just take a little bit of the pressure off for a while. I think we saw this happen last year, and I think it can work. And again, I'm not saying you got to bat him 9th or anything crazy like that. We're not trying to send any kind of mixed messages to one of the most important players and one of the hardest working members of your team. But it does feel like at some point here, if this continues to trend in this direction, the Braves, it's going to behoove them to look at the spots of their order and what they're getting out of each one of them and maybe shake things up just a little bit.
Yeah, I've been calling for it on Locked On Braves for about a week now to at least move him down to the 4 hole and swap him and Sean Murphy. With as hot as Sean Murphy has been, and as much as Acuna gets on base, and as much as Matt Olson gets on base. Like, I know he's not racking up the singles. It's pretty much home run or walk here lately for Matt Olson, but he still does get on base a ton. I think it makes sense to at least swap those two in the order and put Sean Murphy up there at least while he's hot and see what it can do. And then, as you said, move Riley down a little bit and see if you can get him going. I mean, the Braves need him. They need him to be that middle of the order bat. And I still believe he will be at some point this year, that he'll get it going. And we know once he does, he can get on one of those big hot streaks and carry a team. But this is an elongated stretch now of him not being very good, and you're wasting some of those big opportunities with him in the 3 hole. So, I still very much a believer in Austin Riley, but I think it's overdue to at least move him down in the order a little bit and see if maybe that gets him going and give some of these other guys an opportunity to drive in some runs.
Yeah, and I know that the Braves clearly understand that the contributions Austin Riley can make to their season, the impact that he can make for this club, it's as big as just about anybody else in this lineup, not named Ronald Acuna Jr. or Matt Olson. I mean, all of these guys are going to be difference makers for you. That's the reason why they're hitting in the top 3 spots of the order. But when something is not working for a longer period of time, typically we'll see a change. And I know Brian Snitker, some of this managing is not just, hey, I'm going to look at the numbers and I'm going to move some things around and I'm going to be devoid of feeling or emotion about it, because you're also managing the human being here. So, you want to keep Austin Riley's confidence up. I mean, Snit, as much as anything, sees the work that's going on, but you got to have some results, I think, to really start to back up that play in that lineup, at least for the time being. Doesn't mean things can't change and you can't swap him back in there at some point once he gets going again. But either way, it's just one of the things that in a Braves season in which they've gotten off to their best start in 25 or so years, you're still looking for ways to improve, be just a little bit better. And when your pitching staff is missing 2 of your big guns in the rotation, you're going to be looking at just about everything else to see what kind of advantage you can get on a given night. So just one of the discussions to have. All right, we're going to talk about game 2 of the series. It is an afternoon affair at Rogers Center, as the Braves and Blue Jays will play on Saturday at 3:07 p.m. We'll get into the pitching matchup after I tell you about our sponsor, So Rare, the revolutionary fantasy baseball game and marketplace, transforming fans into owners with officially licensed digital cards featuring players from across all 30 MLB teams. Unlike other fantasy baseball platforms, So Rare managers truly own their fantasy experience. You buy and sell and collect these cards and compete with these cards against global opponents to win epic rewards. Win or lose, you still own the cards. There's no cost to play. Head to SoRare.com/lockedon to draft your team of free player cards, set your lineup, start competing today to win those rewards. SoRare.com/lockedon and start playing today. So let's take a look ahead at what the Braves have got going on Saturday. As I mentioned, middle contest of a 3-game weekend series up in Toronto. Right-hander Bryce Elder on the mound, 3-0, a 1.74 ERA. Jose Barrios on the mound for the, I was about to say the Twins. He was at one point, but he's on the mound for the Blue Jays these days after the trade. 3-3 of 491. He's kind of struggled in Toronto, Jake, and maybe this is the kind of pitcher the Braves offense needs to run into and they kind of get healthy against somebody who's had a little bit of trouble limiting the other team's offense.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, just want to see some better at-bats. I mean, really just have not seen great at-bats, obviously, on Friday night. But, want to see them get back going, being the offense we know that they can be. It's in there for sure. But a big game now because we don't know what's happening on Sunday quite yet. So want to make sure that, try to even up this series and see what happens on Sunday, who's going to pitch. We know it won't be Soroka at this point. We're not sure who it's going to be. Maybe another bullpen game, but it makes Saturday's game, I think, even more pivotal. Going to need to call on Bryce Elder once again. He's been absolutely unbelievable for the Braves this year, but going to have to ask for him to step up here and give the Braves another chance to win this game, as Spencer Strider did on Friday. But hopefully this time the offense will back him up and they can even the series.
Yeah, it's hard to call Bryce Elder an unsung hero at this point because I feel like we've sung his praises quite a bit, even dating back to the second half of last year. He has routinely pitched into the 6th inning, which is something the Braves and their bullpen most certainly going to need more times than not out of each and every starting pitcher that they put out there. I am fascinated to see, what happens with Sunday, and we'll discuss that once we get there. And that's kind of what Brian Snitker said after the game is, hey, we'll figure out Sunday when we get there. We're going to do everything we can to win on Saturday. So, I would imagine that means kind of all hands on deck in the bullpen. As you mentioned, they stayed away from Dylan Lee in this game because of the start in the bullpen game on Wednesday. If they stay away from him again on Saturday, maybe he would reprise his role and make another start on Sunday. But you got to figure out, I think, the middle contest and have a chance to win the series before you worry too much about it and see if they bring somebody up from the minors. That would be Dylan Dodd at this point. As you mentioned, Michael Soroka started for Gwinnett yesterday, Jared Schuster the day before that. So we're not going to be seeing those guys. So decisions to be made for the Braves, but not before they play this game. Game 2 of the 3-game set at the Rogers Center is at 3:07 p.m. Eastern time on Saturday. It's righty Bryce Elder on the mound for the Braves, Jose Barrios on the mound for the Toronto Blue Jays. Well, that'll wrap things up for this edition of the Braves Postcast. As always, we appreciate you joining us here on Locked On Sports Atlanta. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube. Make sure you click the bell to get notified. Go ahead, leave a like. Even on a loss, we won't mind. We won't tell anybody. Just go ahead and do it. It can be anonymous if you'd like for it to be. Also, make sure that you subscribe to Locked On Braves wherever you get your podcast. For Jake Mastroianni, I'm Grant McAuley. We will catch you next time on the Braves Postcast. And until then, so long, everyone.